everyone, I hope you're doing well. Today we have a new gouache painting tutorial where we paint this light lake scenery with two swans. This is a painting I created for my upcoming shop collection, but I still wanted to film the painting process, so this is a little bit more involved. It will be one of those tutorials where I can't show everything super slowly because this took me close to 5 or 6 hours in real time. But I hope those of you who maybe have some painting experience will still enjoy seeing these steps and following along. I had previously sketched this painting in my small brown colored sketchbook where I tested the colors and composition a little bit, but here we'll start right away in my bigger B5 size watercolor sketchbook. This is my fancier one just because I like to use it for the shop paintings, but any watercolor paper usually works for gouache. Before we jump to the painting part though, I quickly wanted to sketch the swans and add a horizon line to this painting. I wanted to leave quite a bit of room for the sky because I wanted the clouds to be a key part of this painting, and I wasn't planning to add too many details to the water part, which I kind of ended up doing after all. Anyway, I'm using a light blue colored pencil for this sketch, which will blend with the rest of the colors pretty well, but since we're using gouache, you can definitely just use a regular pencil as well. So I just quickly drew these two swans. The one on the right is clearly smaller than the other or further away in the picture, and we'll worry about most of the details later. But after this sketch is done, I want to show you all the colors we are working with. We'll start by painting this sky, where we are mainly going to use blue and light coral shades mixed with a lot of white. We will also add some magenta and burnt umber to create shadows in the clouds, and then we are going to mix a little bit of deep yellow for the lowest part of the sky. I'll try my best to leave the color names on the screen while we progress with this painting, but sometimes it's a little bit difficult if I've mixed a lot of colors on the go and don't really remember everything that went into the mixture. But as you can see, we're starting with this pretty big flat brush, which I think is the best tool to work with the background layer and to create a slight gradient effect. I started by mixing a light blue shade that will go to the top part of the sky, and once we get closer to the horizon, we'll start mixing more of the coral and yellow shades. I wanted the overall tone of this painting to be quite light and muted because that matches my upcoming shop collection, but I also wanted to capture this hazy morning sunrise feel, which, to be honest, I don't know if I succeeded with, but anyway, this meant that I didn't want to use the blue color on its own because I thought that a bright blue sky would give more of a daytime feel than a morning sunrise, if you know what I mean. But after the background gradient, we'll start to paint the clouds on top. I had this one picture reference that I was loosely following for the clouds, and I find that it always helps to have some kind of photo guide, even if it's not for the whole picture. So I wanted the clouds to be quite light and fluffy in this one, not too defined as clouds can sometimes be, which can be a little bit tricky to achieve, especially with gouache paints. So I try to approach this by working on the clouds layer by layer and blending between each step. So we are first laying down this pinkish color that was kind of the main color I wanted for the clouds. I also added some lighter colors, mainly to the bottom parts of the clouds, because my light source in this picture is supposed to be the sun on the horizon. Then after all these color plops were on the page, I took a smaller clean brush that I very lightly dipped in water and then blended between all these colors in random circular motions. You'll notice the colors moving around a lot if your brush is too wet, so I try to work with an almost fully dry brush. There are moments when I blend like this where I don't even know if anything is happening anymore, and it is also very time consuming, but I just try to be patient and work on a small area little by little using very light pressure. Looking back at this footage, I actually kind of liked how the clouds looked at this point, but we'll ruin them together by adding some darker color here. So it's quite tricky to add shadows in the clouds because at the same time, there needs to be some shadows to define the shapes, but it can also very quickly create a stormy or a muddy effect. So if you're looking at this and thinking, wow, that color looks very dark, I feel the same way. Luckily, I could eventually blend out most of this while leaving a darker, shadowy hue behind, but it definitely was way more complicated than it needed to be, so in hindsight, I would not go this far with the shadowy bits. Anyway, we're repeating the exact same steps here, and this is a part in the video that I'll need to speed up a little bit more just because I was sitting here blending these clouds for around 2 hours and still a little bit more at the end. So first, I blended these dark colors, and then following up, we'll add a little bit more of the light colors to the centers of the clouds, and later a little bit more of the white highlights, and repeat these same blending steps. This is definitely one of those paintings where I kept thinking to myself that I was trying to make gouache work as oil paint. I think oils in general create the textural look I really enjoy and gravitate towards. So starting oil painting is actually one of my big goals for this year, and I've already started to watch this oil painting course and have finally gathered all the necessary tools. And let me tell you, oil painting is so high maintenance compared to watercolors or gouache. I feel like every step needs to be considered much more, and just the drying time alone will be a huge obstacle for me to learn. But I do love the look of oil painting, so I'm willing to do all of that and at least give it a serious go. When I have something to share with you, I'll definitely want to take you on my oil painting journey and share my thoughts and learnings on the way. I do want to enjoy it on my own as well, and filming might be a little bit trickier, especially if I do something in bigger size, so I'm still not sure how I'll do that, but we'll see when we get there. Anyway, I kind of liked leaving some brush strokes here, especially with the light colors. To be honest, I was also getting tired of working on the sky and decided to jump to the rest of the painting so that we could make better decisions about the colors here later. So we can finally move on to the lower part of the painting and cover this large white area. We'll start with very similar colors we used in the sky, but we are just doing everything upside down. So I started with these blue shades that mainly go to the lower part of the water, and then we'll start adding the pink color when we move up toward the horizon. I also wasn't really feeling the color in the lowest part of the sky here. My initial idea was to keep the lowest part as the lightest area, which would be almost white, and I felt like it was now too dark and bright, so I decided to go over this part with some very light paint and kind of start over here. But then I got another idea that I wasn't initially planning to do, which was adding this bright white glimmery light effect on the horizon using a dry brush. Using a dry brush will create these very noticeable textured strokes, and I kind of like this, so I decided to leave it be for now, and then we can always cover it up later if it doesn't fit the rest of the painting. We'll work much more on the water later, but now I thought we could finally start working on the swans, because having this huge white blob in the middle was quite distracting. The thing about painting swans or any white colored objects in general is that in nature, with lights and shadows, you can't really just paint with pure white. So I hope it will be interesting to see how these quite bizarre looking colors start to make sense little by little, especially when we start adding more color to the lower part of the painting. So again, I didn't really have a plan here. I was just adding a bit of everything and trying stuff out. I was trying to work with cool and warm colors in different parts of the swans. So I thought the top parts could have more of the blue color that would reflect from the sky. And then I wanted the shadowy parts to have a cooler pink tone with some brown to tone down the saturation. I also left a little bit of room for warmer, glowy parts that would match the peachy yellow sunset, and there will also be a few purely white areas. The main thing to remember here is that in this picture, the light source is behind the swans. So that's what we need to consider while we think about the placements of the highlights and shadows. I was trying to create shadows to the front while almost having this glow around the shapes, which will make it look like the light is coming from behind the shapes. I also wanted the shadow reflection in the water from the swans to be one of the darkest points of this picture. So even though this dark blue that I added under the swans looks super dark for now, we'll actually end up darkening it even a little bit more later. We also need to mix a darker and brighter orange color for the peaks, which I did by mixing the yellow shade with a little bit of brown and magenta. And then I needed to take out ivory black for the face patterns of the swans, but that's actually the only place in this whole picture we'll need pure black. I was really trying not to overpaint these swans and leave them undefined to some extent, because again, I wanted to lean into the paint stroke texture here and not make things too detailed. We'll touch up these ones later in the final polishing phase, but that's easier to do when we have all the rest of the colors on the page as well. So now let's jump back to the water, and I started by adding lots more of the pink color here because I thought that there was not enough reflection from the clouds. I think I added maybe a little bit too much of this color, so I tried to cancel it by mixing some white and blue and using it while blending these pink colors, which kind of worked out okay. Working around the swans is a little bit difficult, but eventually you don't need to worry about that area too much. Now we'll also start to use the darker blue and green shades to create some water lily leaves at the front and also for the reflections of the swans. something I want to mention here is that I know these videos might be a little bit deceiving, and it easily looks like the person painting has a plan and the whole process is very straightforward. However, this couldn't be further from the truth. There were so many moments during this painting where I almost gave up, when I had no idea what to do and I was heavily doubting myself and just randomly tried out things without really having a plan. I also had to take a few breaks just because I suddenly started to hate the painting, and I knew that taking a step back would help me to make a better decision later. That was especially the case with these darker details. I knew this picture needed some darkness, and without any, I feel like it would have been too minimal for my liking, but I just didn't know how to make this work. You'll see me paint over and repaint these leaves and the other water areas multiple times. So yeah, I just wanted to share that in case you have similar feelings while you paint. I don't think that ever goes away, so it's just kind of part of the process. Something I've learned is that painting always involves taking risks or just going with your intuition, and sometimes your intuition is wrong and the risk wasn't worth it, but that's just how it is, and why we need to practice on top of practice to hopefully make better decisions in the future, or at least to learn to fix the situation some other way. But yeah, that's my small ramble. So I was mixing different shades of blue and green here, and I also kept adding these dry white water reflection lines because I like how they look and create some glimmer in the painting again. I also added some straight grass-like strokes here and there because I felt like there needed to be some vertical elements here. Only the leaves were looking very flat to my liking. And then I was also struggling to add the darker colors on other parts of the painting, but I thought if we didn't have any indications of plants here, this would look too much like an ocean and not at all like a lake. So I spent quite a bit of time with this step, just working with this water part and especially with these darker details. And after I was finally somewhat happy, I decided that we needed to increase the contrast in the sky as well. The sky was now looking very flat next to everything else, and I felt like the whole picture was very unbalanced and kind of uninteresting. So after thinking about it for a while and scrolling through so many pictures of clouds, I ended up adding these white details mostly to the upper part of the sky. Don't ask me why I did this, I don't know, but I think it kind of worked. I especially like how adding some of these cooler light blue areas on the tops of the clouds and then adding some more light warm strokes at the bottom edges somehow seem to look good together. Again, this is all just trial and error. I don't know what I'm doing, which is why it's sometimes very challenging for me to explain anything cohesively in these videos. Anyway, I feel like especially adding these white details really helped to balance the sky with the water reflections, and then we just have some little tweaks and polishing to do. So I added a few more highlights here and there, and then we can finally put the brush down and announce this painting is finished. I will definitely make some further edits to this painting on the computer before I add it to the shop. I will need to scan this and edit the colors anyway, but I do think I'm pretty okay with it for now. I think it's just a little bit more minimal compared to my other paintings, so I feel like there's something missing or it was just kind of throwing me off, but I think it matches the upcoming collection. So if you like this style or colors or this overall vibe, please stay tuned. I'll announce the launch date as soon as I can. But I think that's all for this time. I really hope you enjoyed following along. If this was your first time around here and you'd like to stay tuned for more art and journaling, definitely consider subscribing. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a lovely day or night wherever you are, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye bye!